Good morning. We are continuing this series, talking about the core issues, the things that we have to sacrifice and give to God. We're working on Romans 12:1. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice. And these are some of the implications of that. And how God, when he says sacrifice, it's all or nothing, right? When you put something on the altar, you kill it, right? And that's how they always did it in the Old Testament. And then we get to the New Testament, and Paul says, no, don't kill it. Make it a living sacrifice, which is you. And we have to keep doing this over and over and over. So some of these, final battlegrounds, I put that as a final battleground, as if, once you settle it, it's done. And not really, because as a living sacrifice, you just have to keep doing it. You have to keep committing these things over and over. And that's called spiritual growth. That's how we grow, a little bit at a time and over time. It's not always straight up, it's up and down sometimes when we make new commitments. So that's what we're talking about this new year, January, focusing on living sacrifice, and the core issue that we want to talk about today is time. We did money last week, right? Remember the French fries? Okay, good. This week we want to talk about time. And once again, it's all or nothing, right? It's not just set aside a little bit. God says, I don't want just a little bit, I want all of it. So look at Romans 12:1 again. I'll read the whole verse. It says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. So we're going to focus on, last week we focused on the sacrifice, right? That's what sometimes money is for us. It's a way of sacrificing and really putting it on the line. Today I want to talk about living. Living. And how do we live? What is life? Well, that's why I think the core issue of time is so important, because that's where we live. We live in time, right? Time goes by. We move through time and space. And so time becomes an important commodity, maybe even more important than money. Because you can always, well, I say always, you can always make more money, right? Wish we could, don't we? But if you wanted to work 3 jobs, you can make more money. But you cannot add more time. Everybody has the same amount of time, 24 hours. That's it. There's no rich or poor when it comes to time. Everybody is equal. So sometimes what we would really like to do, and this is kind of just for fun, all right? This is not even part of the lesson today, but I get nerdy sometimes, right? So nerd alert coming. Nerd alert. Jessie and I will just have fun with this, all right? This is Jessie and me. We're the nerds. What if you want to slow down time, right? What if you would like more time, if you could get the clock to slow down a little bit, get the calendar to slow down, the weeks, and sometimes we feel that way, don't we? Yeah. Especially the older we get, the faster it seems like it just goes by. So if you want to slow down, you can actually slow down time. If you study Einstein's theory of relativity, and he'll tell you that the faster you move through space, the slower you are moving through time. And that time actually slows down the faster you go. Isn't that weird? This means that you could actually, like the illustration of the spaceship and the clock, you can put a clock on a spaceship, send it out into space, get it up to really fast speed, high velocity. The clock on that spaceship will move slower than the clock that is on Earth, the stationary clock. It does that. And we don't know exactly why it does that or how. We know it's related to the speed of light, which is the only constant in the universe. These things are, I don't even understand all these things. They are so amazing and mysterious, and nobody understands why the speed of light is constant, why it doesn't change. All we know is that we can calculate it, we can measure it. The speed of light is like 300 million meters per second. That's pretty fast. That's like 1 billion feet per second. That's pretty fast. And so we can measure that, and we can also measure the effect of speed and time. We know this now, that time slows down the faster you go, and we can calculate it using this formula. It's called the Lorentz factor. I just learned this week. Just, Google is an amazing resource. You can Google in all kinds of things.
Yeah, but you can't believe any of it.
Yeah, well, if you can cross-check it enough times, and it comes up, and this comes up consistently, Lorentz factor, named after some astronomer physicist who actually could measure this and calculate it. He said that the rate of time slowing, they call it dilation, time dilation, is this gamma, or y. It looks like a y to you. That's actually the Greek letter gamma, the G. That is related in this equation. 1 over 1 minus your velocity, which is v squared, divided by c squared, which is the constant, the speed of light. So obviously you have to be going really, really fast to make this actually do anything for you. And yet scientists, NASA, anybody who's put satellites in space and space probes, they put this formula into the computer on the spacecraft in order to keep those clocks in sync with our Earth clock. They have to do it because the clock will get off by just a tiny little fraction because of the speed of that spacecraft. Now, isn't that amazing? You're not amazed yet. So what if you want to slow down time? What if you would like time to go like half speed? How fast do you have to go? Well, according to this formula, you can see with all these square roots and squaring numbers, that means that it goes up on a curve. And so in order to slow down time by half, you actually have to be going 2/3 the speed of light. So it doesn't work like on a one-to-one basis, like half the speed, 2/3. And the closer you get to the speed of light, the more time slows down. So that if you are going almost the speed of light, time would almost stop. Is that not fascinating? You can stop time. If you could go the speed of light, it would come to a stop. In fact, the formula actually doesn't work when you hit the speed of light, because when you do all the math, you end up doing 1 divided by 0, which is impossible. So the closer you get to that speed of light, the more impossible it is to actually do it. And time stops. And that's why in Einstein's theory of relativity, well, quantum physics are weird, so it doesn't always work with quantum physics, right, Jessie? But according to Einstein's theory, you can't go faster than the speed of light. It is the universal speed limit for the entire universe. And no one knows why. They know the formula works, but they don't know why the speed of light is the only constant in the universe. Well, I say this is where God comes in. Isn't it amazing? If you think about God and who He is and how He's related to the universe, of course God is outside of the universe, He's outside of time, but we also say He is omnipresent. He is everywhere. He occupies all space, all time, And so God is not in motion. He can't be because he's already there. How would he move? God is not in motion. God is this speed of light because it has stopped. He is the 1 over 0 that can't be divided. I'm hoping this blows your mind a little bit, okay? Because it blows mine too. Even the idea that time is not a constant speed, to me that is just so weird. You could put a clock on a spaceship and it would slow down. When you bring that spaceship back, your clocks will not match up anymore. I mean, of course, I'm the nerd. I like this stuff. I love Back to the Future. You know, you put Einstein, the dog, in the car, and you send it up into the future, and the clocks don't match anymore. It's fun. But it actually will happen. And I think that the God factor is part of time and space and velocity, and you just can't figure it out without God. Okay, I said all this just to bring out the nerds in all of us, but also because I want to point out, this is the main idea. Next slide, Jessie. If you're going to be a living sacrifice, if you're going to give everything you have to God, that's what it means to be a living sacrifice. And we're talking about the nitty-gritty, the physical, the real stuff. Because a lot of us can read Romans 12:1 and say, oh yeah, I want to be a living sacrifice. God, I'm all yours. Until it comes down to these things. My time, my money, my body. If I'm going to give it all to God, all or nothing, then God can bless that. Because God is God over time. God is outside of time. He is the 1 over 0 that can't be calculated. He is the constant in our universe. He's the only stationary constant in the universe. And God can bless your time. Only God can do that. Because we talked about this last week. It's kind of like money. Money is a little more physical. We can concrete. We can understand this. That if you give your money to God, God will bless you. Not that I'm saying He's going to, automatically give you back all your money plus, but He will bless your finances. And in the same way, if you give your time to God, He will bless you with more time. I don't know. I don't know how it works, but I know that God is amazing. He's over all of this. And He can, in certain ways, bless your time and make your time better. So how do we do that? How do we give all this to God? It was easier last week when we talked about money because I could say, well, tithe, 10%, just start there. But when you talk about time, what do? You tithe your time? Give 10% of your time? That'd be a good start. Well, I read a story about it. I told this to our guys Wednesday. I read an article about a guy who took that so literally that he decided that he's going to live about 90 years, and so he's going to tithe his life to God. And he decided to give God 9 years of his life. Because he's going to live 90. So he said, and I'll do it right up front, right out of college. I'm going to spend the first 9 years of my career as a missionary. I'm going to give 100% full-time life to God for 9 years. But at the end of those 9 years, then it's me. Then I work for me. Now it's my time. That doesn't quite work either, does it? That's not what God wants, because when He asks for a living sacrifice, He wants your life.
He wants a relationship.
A relationship, yep.
I mean, the old saying, how kids spell love is T-I-M-E.
Yep. We're going to talk about that too. So that's where it starts. And that's what I want to talk about first. But I want to talk about 3 types of time that we have to really be intentional about. we really have to think about, and we really have to give to God. So the first one, let's start there, Jesse. Number one, I call it stop time. Time out. The time you spend with God. There's the relationship factor that you're talking about. If you want a relationship with God, you've got to spend time with God. In fact, I find it fascinating. The entire Bible is almost obsessive about this. Compulsive about this. That you have to spend time with God. And in order to do it, you've got to stop. You've got to step outside your normal life, your normal spending, your normal living. It's almost like God is saying, stop living and spend some time with me. And God did this from the beginning. He built it into the calendar of our weekly life. He built it into our bodies, that we have to have daily rest. From the beginning of creation, in Genesis 2:3, it said God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. God stopped. Of course, God has already stopped, right? He's the eternal rest. He's the eternal stationary constant in the universe. But even God stopped from working one day. And so that has been built into our lives and our calendars and our cycles. In fact, God intended for us to follow this weekly rhythm, a weekly cycle of spending one day out of 7 resting, quiet, stopped, in order to spend time with God. In order to be quiet and to listen and let God talk to us. And we know this. I didn't do a whole lot of studies on this, but I've done it before, that if you don't do this, if you run 7 days a week, if you work 7 days a week, if you're constantly going, you will pay a price. Physically, emotionally, relationally. It'll all fall apart. You can't do it. God designed us not to do that. And God even put in all kinds of yearly cycles that the Israelites had to observe. All these yearly festivals and yearly holidays or holy days and times where they had to stop. And he put in these cycles of 7 years, and every 7 years they had to do something different. And he kept building into them rhythms, times where you have to stop and just spend time with God. In fact, even daily, the Bible keeps talking about these daily stop times. Beginning with Genesis 3, we find that God spent time with Adam and Eve. When? Do you remember? When did he walk with them? When?
In the beginning.
Right, in the beginning.
In the cool of the day.
In the cool of the day. Yeah. In the evening. We're not sure what it said, what they meant, but I think it's probably the evening after work. Did Adam and Eve work? Yes, they did. They worked. They tended the garden. They worked. So all day long they worked, and then at night, God stopped by and talked with them. And they just spent some stop time. Then we read the Psalms, and the Psalms keep talking about the mornings, right? The psalmist David keeps saying, in the morning I raise my request to you. In the morning I hear from you. And so there's a morning time too. And what did Jesus do? When did Jesus pray?
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night sometimes early in the morning, sometimes all night long.
At the garden.
In the Garden of Gethsemane. Yeah. So we find examples in the Bible of a daily time that it doesn't give us the exact time that we have to do it. It's just a daily stop time. We desperately need this, don't we? We need that daily stop time, not only for our physical and emotional well-being, but also for our spiritual well-being. This is the time that we listen to God, talk to God, and worship God. It's the relational time. And I think we desperately need this because we live, like it says in this picture, we live in a restless world that will run 24/7 if we don't step out of it and stop. We desperately need to stop. I like to just say, give it a rest. You ever told somebody that when they won't stop and they won't shut up, they won't turn off the music? Give it a rest, come on. We need a rest, we need that stop, we need a quiet time. And for a lot of us, we feel, I think this is a cultural thing too, we're afraid of being bored, right? We're afraid of the stop times. We're afraid we're missing something. We're afraid it's too quiet. Our culture has conditioned us to be constantly in noise. And it's hard for us to just turn it off and be quiet.
I think too, though, we're afraid of what people think.
Yeah, we might be. That we're not busy enough.
Yeah, busyness is something that,
It's like a badge of honor. Yeah, I'm too busy. Yeah, I'm important because I'm too busy, right? Yeah, you gotta be careful with that too. We desperately need this. Look at the next slide, Jessie. The idea of rhythm is like music. Randy understands music. Have you ever tried to look up a definition of music? There's all kinds of definitions of music, but this is one of my favorites. Music, the art of arranging sounds in time. There's time, right? And it goes on to talk about the varying sounds of pitch and timbre and melody and harmony and rhythm. Now what's rhythm? You don't have rhythm unless you have start and stop. Music is not music unless there are stops in there, unless there's a rhythm. In fact, the most famous symphony of all time, Beethoven's Fifth, everybody recognizes this theme. Dun, 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 dun. Stop. Dun, 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 dun. Stop. Now what would it be without those stops? It wouldn't be the same. It would not make sense. It wouldn't even be pretty. In fact, Beethoven's symphony begins with a rest. You can read the music, you'll see it starts with rest. In order to be dramatic, in order to be beautiful, in order to be defined, it has to have a rest in there. And I think our lives are built that way too. In order to have defined life, we have to have start and we have to have stop. Otherwise, it's all noise. What is music without stops? Is that music? That's not music, that's noise. And yet our lives tend to be like that. If we don't intentionally take time, carve out time, schedule time to stop. That's what we need. 7 days, we need a holy day, we need a Sunday, we need a Sabbath to stop. And every day we need some time just to stop. Because this defines us and makes our life worth living. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to live a life that was like that all the time. So we need stop time. Then we also need, next one, Jessie, go time. Right? wasn't sure how to talk about this. I just thought I want to keep it cute and easy and understandable and you know, like an outline that you can remember. 3 different types of time. Stop time, well, of course, then you've got to have go time. But what I mean by go time, I mean time that you are going outside yourself. You're going as a representative of God. Because stop time is time with God, and go time is time as God. I'm sorry, but we do represent God, don't we? We are God's love to those people around us. And so again, we have to be intentional about this. This is the second time that you have to carve out time. You have to schedule time to go be with the people that you love. And I think family should come first. This is going outside myself, being a living sacrifice. And God says, go to that person. Put your arms around that person, because your arms are my arms. Your feet are my feet. Your voice is my voice to that person. And it starts with your spouse. If you're married. It goes with your family, your friends, relationships. Those are the people that God has put around you to go represent me to them. And this is very intentional also, because if you don't do it intentionally, it doesn't get done. Why? Because we're busy, right? It takes time. You have to actually be intentional and go and be with them. In fact, it's not so much go time. Once you get there, it's sit time. Right? Sit with that person. Sit and listen. Sit and chat. Sit and eat. Sit and pray with them. Maybe sit and share the gospel with somebody. Or just it may be go time. In fact, like it's go out on a date. Go spend some time. Go with that person. Go see what they're doing. This concept is also in the Bible, isn't it? That we are God's hands and feet, and that we love God by loving others. And how do you spell love? Tine. And you have to be so intentional. You have to carve out this time.
I don't know if this works for everybody this way, but one of the things God does for us in the family, when we spend time with family and friends that are as close as family,
Right, friends too.
it's the easiest time to talk about, and the most opportunities come up talking about what God is doing for us and how God's acting in our lives. And I think a lot of those times, not only is it's the easiest to share it with the family and explain it and have those discussions and hash it through, but also it preps me when I'm talking to others outside the family. Those discussions come back up and I'm able to share that with others. So
Yeah,
I don't know if there's any value there, but that's how it works in our family.
I think that's good too. I mean, it is ministry time, ministering to the family, ministering to your family,
And being ministered to.
and being ministered to.
Mhm.
But sometimes it is simply being with somebody. There is the ministry of presence. It is spelled T-I-M-E. There's just no way around it. And usually it means turning off the TV, turn off the phone. Oh, that's hard, isn't it? Why did I look at Alice? I don't know. Maybe turn off the phone. And have you ever been out on a date with somebody who just looks at their phone the whole time? You just want to slap them, right? You just want to turn it off.
Everything God wants to do is spend time with just Him, and you can't get off that phone.
Yeah, it does. That's the time with God, but then there's the time with others that you've got to do the same thing. And in both of those times, you have to be so intentional. You've got to carve that time out, or you won't do it. In fact, I believe this is not just like every now and then, although it is. You try to have date time, family time, friend time, everything but social media time. Because I think social media is antisocial. That's another whole story. But I think it could even apply to your careers, your life, your ministry. I mean, I think back on our lives, and Susie and I, a little over 5 years ago, we made a very crucial decision. I mean, when I say crucial, I mean this was a crossing point in our lives, our career. Whether or not to go back to Mexico as missionaries or stay here in Hart, Michigan. And it was in many ways it was not a hard decision, in other ways it was, because, to be honest, my missionary career, I should say our, but it was really me, was taking off. And I mean, it was fun because some of my leaders, my superiors, were giving me attention that I'd never gotten before. And they were starting to send me places, and I was spending more and more time farther and farther away from home. I was traveling all the way around the world. And we had to make a decision. And one of the things that bothered me about that was that my kids were at a very important time in their lives. They were pre-teens and going into their teen years. And that's absolutely essential, crucial to them. And I really felt like God was saying, stop. Don't give all your time working for me. Your better time is working for me at home with your family. So that was one of the reasons why we decided not to go back to Mexico, because my kids were at that incredible time that I didn't want to spend traveling around the world, traveling all over Mexico, or traveling, just being away from home too much. Now that I'm right here in little Hart, Michigan, it's easy, right? No, I still have to do it. I still have to carve out time, because my little churches would still take up all my time if I let them.
In ministry, I mean, you don't think you're losing time with God, but you
Yeah.
can. It's like you're constantly busy.
And it's easy to do it in ministry because you feel like, well, I'm giving this to God, of course. You know, I'm willing to sacrifice my family for God, aren't I? Something nice. And God says, no, you're not. He says, I gave you that family first. And it should come first. So,
They can get pretty strenuous outside of the ministry profession too, because
oh yeah,
companies now are expecting, Saturdays, Sundays, and your job's on the line, and you say no.
yep. They want overtime.
Yeah,
They want constant time.
it can be stressful.
Depending on what your job is, sometimes they want you to work at home, online.
They want you to be hooked all the time.
Yeah, you got your phone on all the time. Yeah, it's crazy. So you got go time, stop time, but there is a third type of time that you really have to be intentional about, but it's not the carving out of time. I call this the flow time. I didn't know what else to call it because I already had stop time and go time. What do you call the other one, like in between time? Well, this is all the time. This is every day. This is your whole life. It flows, your work, your play, your retirement, your school, everything. This is all the other time. The stop time, you set aside, you carve it out. Go time, you set that aside too, to be with your family. But the rest of it, what about all this other stuff? What about your leisure time, your play time? Boy, it's really tempting. I'm a pastor and I'm, running churches and I'm always looking for volunteers and I want somebody. I would just love to lay a guilt trip on all of you today and say, God wants more of your leisure time. Would you please give more of your free time to God? What I mean is give it to me, give it to the church. And it's true, we do give our time to God that way as we serve, as we volunteer, and there's always jobs to do. But I don't want to give the impression that there's sacred time, church time, ministry time, and then there's secular time, leisure time, work time. It's all God's. From the moment you wake up in the morning until you go to bed at night, that's God's time. Even while you're sleeping, it's God's time. It's all His. And so we give that all to God. It's not like God is trying to compete for your time. It's not like the church is competing for your time. Because this is really all God's.
And working on a committee at a church or doing some service for the church is not more spiritual, more valuable to God than your time spent with a friend or building new relationships. Or it's the same. It's God's time.
It's God's time. Even working for your boss is God's time. The Bible says that, doesn't it? You work for Him as if you are working for me. God says that. It's all God's time. Look at it this way. Paul put it this way, 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. I'm going to read this whole passage. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. And I would go on from there to say, honor God with your time, with everything that you do with your body. You're living. You are not your own. Look at the next slide, Jessie. This is what it comes down to. You are not your own. Your time is not your own. Whoa, now that's hard to understand, and that's really hard to do. You really have to be intentional about this thinking. It's not carving out, it's thinking. This is not my time, this is God's time. But I'm at work. This is my boss's time, You are working for him, but you're also working for me. Well, I'm at home. This is my play time. God said, well, no, you're not playing for yourself, you're playing for me. Is that all right? Can we do leisure time for God? I think so. It's not you're going to school or studying because you got to get a grade. You are doing this for me, God says. All of it. And I know kind of what you might be thinking, because as I was going through this sermon this week, and I got to this third point, and I had to write this third point 3 different times because I didn't want to get it this way. And I finally had to come back to this and say, it's all God's time. And even I wanted to say, but God, don't I get any time for me? What about my free time? Is that not my time? And God says, no. It's not your time. Oh yes, you can relax. You need to. Oh yes, you can have leisure. Oh yes, you can be entertained. But it's not your time. And what you do in those time slots needs to honor me. It's not yours. All of life, 24/7, is God's time. Does that mean you have to work for the church 24/7? No. God will bless your time. But he wants you to be constantly thinking, keeping that in mind. It's intentional. This is not my time, this is God's time. This is not my body, this is God's body. This is not my money, this is God's money. And that's how it works. That's what living sacrifice is all about. So here's a conclusion. Just to hit those 3 points again, 3 types of time. Take time to stop, to be with God. Make time to go, to be with others. But let all the time flow as an honor to God. So can you remember that outline? Stop, go, flow. Right? Stop, go, flow. Stop, go, flow. Stop, go, flow. All week long, you can remember that. I gotta stop, I gotta go, I gotta let it flow. Let's pray. Lord, we do thank you again for being the God of time and universe and space and velocity and speed of light and all these crazy things. And yet you are the creator over all of that. And you can even bless our time, and you can multiply it, and you can make it worthwhile if we give it to you. So help us to do that, Lord, with all our stop time. Remind us to take time to do that. With our go time, to be with others, to be with those that you want us to love, you want to love through us. And with all of life, every day, 24/7. We give it to you as a living sacrifice. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Stop, go, flow.